You are listening to Missed Apex Podcast. We live F1.
Hey guys, Spanners here. We're at Talladega with Trumpets and Christina, the partners of our friends at 2311 Race Team, and we're going to be asking what's better, NASCAR or Formula One. We could just be mature and say, hey, they're both great, but that's not really our style. So we're going to be speaking to some brilliant people. We're going to give you our opinions of this fake contest I've invented between NASCAR and Formula One. So let's start by talking to 2311 superstar Tyler Reddick. We're in the 2311 hauler. We are speaking to last year's points champion with a wealth of experience. Tyler Reddick's here. So, of course, the first thing I've got to ask him is, can you help me beat Adam on the sim on the NASCAR stage tomorrow? I need to know how to survive a superspeedway.
Can I help you? I mean, I don't know if it'll guarantee you winning, but I can do my best to help you.
How do you survive a superspeedway?
Well, I think on iRacing and versus real life, it's a little bit different. I think on iRacing, there's a whole lot of fuel saving on iRacing, and in real life, we do a lot of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say for the most part, surviving the wreck.
So this is the big one that Formula One fans might not be familiar with, but there always seems to be this anticipation for a big crash. For you as a driver, are you hoping it doesn't happen, or it's like an opportunity?
I feel like over the years, it's pretty much shifted to you just more or less hope you're not in it. When you get to 20 laps to go, typically it happens at the very end of the race now. But when you get to about 20 to go and you're not in position, you want it to happen. I mean, the odds are you're going to be in it, but in the small chance that you're not, you might find yourself in position to win.
I mean, your boss is in earshot and you're just like, nah, I'll be all right. Nah, is it just a case of if it happens, it happens?
Yeah, it typically does happen though, but it used to be, if you were, I would say, let's call it 6th place or higher, you could avoid the wreck. But typically now, the car that triggers the wreck is the car in second place of whatever row, and they're wrecking the lead car of the bottom or the middle row. So,
why has that gotten worse? Is it because we noticed in the Xfinity this season, it's been quite aggressive and pushy? Has that all come up from the junior series over the last few years?
No, I think it's actually the opposite. How we race on the Cup side is like trickled down. Into the other series.
Oh, like in F1, there's the Verstappen effect, and now all the kids do that and shove everyone off.
Yeah, basically. I think that's very fair. I wouldn't be surprised if the next road course we have, more people don't do more of that. I think that happens now because these cars, the front and rear bumpers are so rigid, and you can do so much pushing with these cars, more so than what you used to be able to do with the previous generation race car. That basically, the harder the second place car in line can push the first place car in line, the faster that entire row, or excuse me, I guess it'd be a column. I don't know, whatever it is.
Column.
the bottom lane or the middle line would be able to go.
So this is sanctioned bumping of the car in front, and does the car in front mind? And if you're the car in front, does it start to piss you off when you're getting hit from behind a lot?
No, typically the only time you get pissed off, right, is if there's not enough pushing taking place. Actually, at the race that I won last time we were last spring here, down the back straightaway for the final lap, all of the pushing I'd had for the last 20 laps kind of just vanished. I wasn't getting the big bumps. We weren't surging ahead. So I think more times than not now in this day and age, you're more frustrated when they're not aggressive enough. But you go back 7-8 years, it would be the opposite. You'd be getting mad, waving your hands, like waving them off, like
right.
if they're pushing too aggressively.
So as fans, during the race, before the big one, what are we looking out for? How do we know that Tyler's doing well? Is it if you're up the front? Is it you're at the back? Or is it if you're just hitting people all day?
I'd say if we're doing well, we're first, second, or third car in line, whether it's the bottom or middle lane.
Yeah, so I wanted to follow up. You're talking about the bump drafting. Is that something that happens in the turns as well as down the straight?
Yes, that's usually what causes the big one. I think everyone's gotten better about understanding that it just doesn't work. I think, again, it's funny, like there were certain eras of the Gen 6 and 7 car where you could somewhat push in the corners. Pretty much for the most part with this car, you really can't push in the corners. the amount of lift it creates underneath the diffuser in this car, it just makes it really, really snappy. And more times than not,
That's like a side effect of using more ground effect in the cars, basically.
Yeah, when we stay really close together, we can go really fast in a straight line.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's why we're able to push down the straightaway so hard and so well. The car does seem, you really don't need the utmost amount of rear downforce going in a straight line unless you get out of shape. But in the corners, you still need it to have the grip.
Okay, so you mentioned being second or third in line.
First, second, or third.
First, second, or third. So as you get to the back, does it become more difficult for you as a driver to just deal with being at the tail end of the line instead of up near the front?
You're kind of just stuck. You really don't have much place to go. I'd say once you're past like the 5th or 6th car in line, your job for the most part is just to stay closed up, keep the gaps closed up to help your line, maintain its momentum.
I'm interested in the social pressures around this big one. So let's say, for example, you were, say, at Darlington and there ended up being an end of race incident. I've seen people in the past getting a little bit, aggressive. There's confrontations after the race. With the big one, is it a bit more accepted, or do you still?
Yeah, I think nowadays it is. There's obviously, you could wind the clock back to, like I think it was the 1976 Daytona 500, where Cale and Allison were going at it, right? And in that sort of situation, right, it's 2 cars racing for the win. Crashing on speedways happens, but it's a lot of times driver induced. That's still the case today, but a lot of times the line is so fine when you get to the very end of the race. We're basically we start the race and we think our threshold is here, and the more that we run here, that we're like, okay, well, we can be more aggressive, be more aggressive, and be more aggressive. And as you build up to the end of the race, it just keeps going up. And there'll be points in the race where we begin to push too hard, and we'll be like, you know what, it's stage 1 or stage 2, or, we still got 50, 60 laps to go in the race. Here's our limit. That's as far as we're going to go. And when you get to the very end of the race, people kind of just turn that off. Like that part of their brain that says, this is all I have. They just turn that off and keep exceeding it. And then typically
that's when it happens.
A push happens at the wrong place, gets too aggressive. And because we're all running so close together, just by the nature of this car, how it works in the draft, it wipes out about half the field.
About half the field to look out for. But you were talking about communicating, and you sort of somehow decide to back off. Of course, you can't talk to the other drivers. We just found out recently that in 2012, they experimented for a year with in-car driver-to-driver communications. If they offered you that now, would you take it?
No, it'd pretty much be useless, I think. Yeah. I mean, there might, if it was me and Bubba working together, I could really explain to him certain areas where I'm like, hey, yeah, this is all I got, or I can have more here or there. But really in these cars, you can kind of see it when you're being a little bit too aggressive, when a bump's getting someone upset, or, and to, a lot of times if you're the one pushing, the car ahead of you will be giving you that feedback, not directly to you, but the driver will communicate it to their spotter, and the spotter of that other car will go communicate it back to the other spotter.
Or you could always use the old-fashioned hand signals to communicate your unhappiness.
Those can be confusing, honestly. Yeah. I mean, a middle finger's pretty straightforward. A wave can be straightforward, but if you need to push harder, the hand signals don't really make sense.
Well, I've got a tactic for you if you want a little bit of help, because I found out that the engine supplier cars will kind of work together. Now, you've got 3 drivers and there's 3 Toyota teams. My suggestion would be, because young people are stupid and privileged, they don't know what they've got, why don't you each deploy your slowest driver as a barrier to let the old sweats get ahead? His mind's going. I think he's thinking, I think we've really hit on something. Yeah.
I know you're picking it before the race, but the way it kind of works out once the race gets going, when these teams, these manufacturers work together, is, essentially when we pit and we begin to complete the cycle and we're all meeting back together on the racetrack, they kind of already are. Whether it's the Chevy line, the Toyota line, the Ford line of cars, typically those last 3 or 4 cars in that line that had the least efficient pit stop and time on pit road that just didn't execute best, that's kind of their role. You know, it's on them to do everything they can to keep that other line of cars from advancing past us. So that kind of already goes on.
I think he's going to steal our idea and then pretend he was going to do it anyway. That's the.
It's believe it or not, this has already been happening for a long time, but it's just not predetermined at the start of the race. It just, whoever screws up the most is the car that is fallen with that fate.
All right, so I got one more for you here, which is a lot of people have been talking about fuel saving and how necessary it is.
Yes.
As a driver, and this is only going to be a two-part question, I promise. As a driver, how much of a skill is that really? And is that something you look forward to, or you just hate having to do?
I would say if we were in the Gen 6 car, the car that we were just in, I would not be a fan of it. But the way this car races all out in the draft, there really isn't movers, like comers and goers. You know, there's not cars driving to the front, and there's not cars just
Too much fuel.
leading to the back. It's not really that. It's just when these cars get going all out, you used to be able to get 2 or 3 cars hooked up together and really be able to surge ahead like 7-8 mile an hour for like a short burst. This car has just so much more drag. It's just like you hit a wall at a certain mile per hour at a certain speed, and we're all just basically trying to stay at terminal velocity of this car. Like, we can't break through that barrier as easy as we could with the old car. So if it wasn't for fuel saving and how the field kind of spreads out and mixes up while we save the fuel, us as drivers wouldn't have many opportunities to really dice it up, go to the back, go to the front. So as of right now, it's a necessary evil, I think.
Starting towards the back of the midfield, but tomorrow is another day. Good luck, Tyler Reddick. Thanks for chatting to Mr. Apex Podcast.
Yep, we're starting right where we want to.
He's got them right where he wants them.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so we are here with Riley Herbst, and it is your first year with 2311.
Yes,
How are you settling in so far?
it's good. I love it. First year in the Cup Series, so it's exciting. It's very difficult. It's a lot of fun, but I have a really good team behind me, and I'm on, I think, the best team in the garage for sure. So it's good progress.
Excellent. Now, you've raced here previously in
Yep.
Xfinity.
Yes.
What's the jump like going from that to this biggest challenge so far?
Just the competition factor, right? Everybody in the Cup Series is so good. All 36 of us can go win any day. Where in the Xfinity Series, the competition kind of falls off a little bit when you get to mid-pack. So that's the biggest thing. The cars drive wildly different. Independent rear suspension on the Cup cars. There was truck arms and solid rear axles in the Xfinity car. Single lugs on the Cup car, bigger brakes, bigger tire patch. So there's so much difference between the two. So it's about like learning them and getting up to speed fast.
And with Talladega superspeedway,
Yep.
what is the biggest thing to be keeping an eye out for this weekend for you?
You want a good balanced car, because if it's not the fastest car, at least it drives okay and you can make your way through the pack. And hopefully you can make your way to the front of the pack and kind of stay out of the mess. A lot of big wrecks here, a lot of flips, a lot of people going into the wall and the catch fence. So you don't want to be one of those people. That's the main objective.
So there's a lot of team tactics across teams in super speedways. Has it been difficult for you to slot in with people who have so much previous experience? Is that something that you feel anxiety about, or are you like, oh no, I got this?
No, it's good in that aspect because I'm on manufacturer with Toyota. So there's 7 of us out there. So we all kind of work together, and we have a really good alliance with another Toyota team, Joe Gibbs Racing. So all 7 of us work really well together on these plate tracks, and that's the main objective because you can't really do it by yourself nowadays. Back in the early 2000s, you could kind of win these races by yourself, but now you need teammates and manufacturer help.
Lovely. And so this is my first time.
Okay.
For Speedway.
Have you been to the Boulevard yet?
No, not yet.
Oh.
That is on our list of things to do.
Good concert tonight.
Excellent. Where should I be watching from for Talladega for this one?
I would like to get like as tall up as you can, as high as you can in the bleachers, so you can see the whole racetrack. Because it's 2.5 miles around. It's a big racetrack, and things happen pretty fast.
Excellent. Now, you are sponsored by Monster.
Correct.
Do you have a favorite flavor that I should be trying?
My favorite flavor is the tea lemonade. That's just, I've always been like a fan of those Arnold Palmers as a kid, and now Monster has one. So that's definitely my favorite flavor.
It's been a thing, NASCAR F1.
Yeah.
So I got to ask, Max beat him, yes or no?
Me?
Yes.
In a stock car, yes.
Okay, I love that answer. And secondly, are you an F1 fan? Do you have
Yeah, I
a
love
team
F-
or driver you like?
Yeah, I'm big time Team Papaya. So hopefully we'll take both championships this year. It's kind of a fun thing we like to do before our races. We have the F1 race on Sunday morning in the lounge, and we all kind of banter and bet on them. So big fan of Oscar and Lando and everything they've done over there, and it's pretty cool to see the evolution of that car so fast and how quick they are right now.
Do you have a pick between the two of them?
Yeah, in the beginning of the year it was Lando. It's kind of wavering now, but it's still Lando. I have confidence in him. Once he gets that swagger back in Lando, he'll be just fine.
The Miami race, instill the confidence back in, return to the first win.
He needs a good party night with like Griffin, Skrillex, and then that'll get his mindset right, and then like a party Lando, and then he'll be back. Cut his nose on a champagne bottle Lando, and he's heads back in the game.
Excellent. Do you have a big plan for when you get a first victory?
A lot of Monster vodkas.
Excellent
Yep,
call.
Yep. Late night.
Late night,
Late
early
night,
morning.
early morning, whatever you want to call it.
Amazing. Well,
Amazing.
thank you for
Thank
having
you,
a chat with
guys.
us.
Yeah.
It's been phenomenal.
Love it.
Well, I can't tell you how incredible it is to be in the 2311 hauler talking to their superstar drivers. If this was F1, this would be as if we were in the Aston Martin motorhome, and talking to drivers like Charles Leclerc or Ollie Behrman. So if you're going to get into NASCAR, Tyler Reddick is a great driver to say, right, I'm going to be a fan of Tyler and I'm going to follow him because he's been doing very well. Last season, he was the regular season champion. And he always talks to us when we've turned up, and we had a lovely 20-minute chat with him afterwards. Just a real good guy, fun guy. So why not throw in behind the drivers we've just interviewed today, and of course Bubba Wallace, who's the other driver in the 23 car for 2311. So before we left for Miami, we were able to speak to their communications head and also their chief strategist, and then I'll play an interview where Christina sat down for a second with the team principal, Steve Laletta, to ask what NASCAR can offer Formula One fans. So first, we're going to go into the interview we had with JR, and he is think of him as the Mike Caulfield equivalent. And then after those interviews, we'll play me and Matt talking about what event would we choose to go to now if we were offered. Would we go to Talladega or would we go to the Miami Grand Prix? Now, we'll be going down to Talladega to see some NASCAR, some 2311, my first super speedway. But as ever on our NASCAR adventures, we have the helpful people at 2311 helping us out. And one of the most helpful people that we've had to keep Matt away from because, quote, Matt is ruining the operations of the team, is their strategist, JR Houston. Hello, JR. Thanks for talking to me.
Yeah, glad to be back. Looking forward to you guys coming down to Talladega.
Yeah, so we'll be there on the Saturday, and we'll be watching your qualifying, and then, of course, the Cup race and the Xfinity are really cool. I'm assuming it's going to be fairly hot in Alabama, but I did notice a little bit of rain on the radar. So first thing, what role does rain play with NASCAR? Does it mess things up?
Certainly. So our races are considered official. Obviously, we can't race in the rain on ovals, especially super speedways. So our races are considered official at halfway or the end of stage 2. For Talladega in particular, halfway comes before the end of stage 2. So if we get to lap 90 and it rains at any point after that, at a point where they don't think they can resume, the race is official. So try to maximize your track position if you think rain is coming.
So you
can
just
definitely
stop?
get chaotic.
So you just stop if there's rain?
Yep. Yeah. Actually, 2311, we actually won a rain race that ended early with Bubba Wallace, first company win. We told Bubba to push at the right time, and we pushed up to the front, and the rain came as we were leading, and the race was ended, and we were basically declared the winners.
So you saw the rain was coming and went, we need to get to the front now. Whose call was that? Come on.
I mean, it's a combination of all of us. So we have people here at the Xfinity Speed Center that are hyper focused on the weather, trying to time specifically when the rain is going to get there, similar to a lot of the F1 teams. And it's you can't predict when it's going to start to sprinkle. You can kind of tell if it's going to be race ending rain. That's when you tell the driver, all right, giddy up, drive up to the front best you can and defend your ass off.
Oh my goodness, the European mind could not comprehend simply stopping when it rained. People complain when it's a monsoon and the F1 cars can't go round. But yeah, I suppose if NASCAR, you're mainly racing in very hot climates and rain is quite rare, so it'd be silly to spend money making it survivable in the rain, I suppose. Right, your role is the strategist. You're not the spotter. You're not door clear. You're not guy up high on the left. You're sitting there in the weeds looking at the strategy, and I don't want to get into any trouble, but when me and Matt were looking over your shoulder as keen strategy and tire strategy fans, it was just a dream watching how your brain works as things unfold in the race. So you're there kind of in the background for the whole team looking at what strategies would work out rather than just being on one guy's shoulder.
Yeah, so I'm basically looking at the whole field, really, because one of the things about strategy, right, is you want to optimize your own race and come up with the best strategy for you, but you're not out there by yourself. It's not like golf where you're only playing against yourself. You have all the other competitors out there, so you have to try and think about what is best for them as well. So you're kind of playing that game of what's best for everybody, and if everybody does what's best for them, then what's best for you, to maximize all of that combined. And at Talladega and Daytona, the plate tracks, it's a little extra because the cars don't get away from you. You're just racing them all.
Because you're in the pack together. So I'm wondering, as a broad point, we have something called, that I call the Jensen Button call, or more recently, the George Russell call, where they go, what if we do something different? What if we do something slightly against the grain of what the other cars are doing? Because if it comes off, I'll be a genius. I suppose it's always tempting to go for that low percentage strategy. Do you find yourself being risk averse, or are you you're wearing spurs because you're a cowboy?
I find myself being risk averse for sure. I think it depends too on what kind of day you're having. On a normal race day, at a normal track, you might say, okay, we could pit a little earlier, we could pit a little later. You can kind of control your own destiny a little bit. At a plate race, where you're drafting, you can't do really anything on your own. So not only do you have to convince yourself to do a riskier strategy, but you got to convince maybe 4 or 5 other people to do it with you. That becomes way harder to do.
But you've got 3 cars now in the 2311. How much difference does that make? I'm going to ask you to explain what you mean by plate race and the difference between the super speedways and the ones we've seen before. But having a 3rd car, is it just more work, or do you go, we've got a sacrificial lamb? No offense to the lad.
No, it's not necessarily more work. It's almost less. It's a little more power in numbers. So, Toyota, we have 7 teams out there that are closely aligned with Joe Gibbs Racing, and then 9 total, including Legacy. So before we were 2 versus, kind of 6. 2 people trying to convince 6 people to do something. You add a single car to that, your numbers get a lot better for trying to convince the others to do something with you. Lucky for me, I try and come up with the best thing for our 3 cars, so I don't have to convince the other 2 what to do. And then when it comes down to Sunday, it's a lot easier to try and convince the collective whole.
So it would be as if somehow, let's say the unimaginable, like imagine Red Bull had a partner team that used the same engine and they collaborated to kind of fudge things in their favor. Unbelievable, I know. But if you have all, like say, Haas, Sauber and Ferrari all working together, in NASCAR, that's a bit more of an open secret, isn't it? That, you're more friendly.
Yes. Yeah. Especially so at plate races, where we're basically at terminal velocity. So, we're at 200 miles an hour. We're at terminal velocity. The only way to go faster is to basically draft, to get the toe, you could say, and then push the car in front of you once you get that toe. So you reduce the drag for those cars, but you kind of get, quote unquote, double the horsepower. So while a car can go probably about 180 miles an hour on its own without any helper on the racetrack, once you get more and more cars in a line, reducing drag and adding horsepower, you basically can go, upwards 200, 205 miles an hour. So that definitely helps for.
So 1 car on its own slow,
Yep.
2 cars together helps the car behind, and it also helps the car in front as well,
Yes,
right?
Yep.
That's the physics thing that's difficult for people to comprehend. But then if I add a third and a fourth car in a line, all four of those can go faster than the one and the two.
Yes. Yep. And there was a time, in old NASCAR days where 2 was better than 4. That's not the world that we live in currently. Now, the more the merrier.
Really?
So, 3 is not enough. Even though 2311 we have 3 cars, we definitely rely on our Toyota teammates to kind of build those numbers to 7 and then 9, to just try and, if we want to make a pit lap decision and we want to pit, when we go back out onto the racetrack, we could be by ourselves. So we want to be basically pitting with 7 to 9 cars every time we pit. So
Are you allowed to talk to the other Toyota JRs and say, well, I don't know, lap 50?
yeah.
Right? You can.
Yes, 100%. We can, and we spend a lot of the race talking about. A lot of it is fuel mileage racing, to try and minimize stop time on pit road, and we're talking to the other engineers like, how much fuel do you need? What's the furthest you can go? Talking the entire time about basically how to pit. There was actually a point in time where the drivers could talk to each other, but
love that.
NASCAR outlawed that.
I love that. How long did that last?
Like a year, so like 4 races. It's crazy. There's some really good videos on YouTube you should check out. That's really fun.
Check that out. I was wondering whether you could have it, but only in proximity. So you could only talk to them once
Yeah.
in like 4 or 5 seconds or something like that. Okay, so this is really useful for what we've got to look out for on race day. So the cars are going to be in a pack a lot of the time, like a peloton, like we see with Formula E in some of the bigger tracks as well. So they're going to be sitting there. They're going to be conserving fuel. They're going to be trying to be in a pack, probably not so that it's ultimately fastest in a pack, but you're using less fuel in that pack.
Yep.
And then at some point, is there a bit of a nudge and a wink, and one team goes, right, let's go?
It's usually when you have to refuel. So everybody, that peloton is a very common term when we talk about the plate races, because the car in front is using the most energy, right? The biker in front is using the most energy. Well, when they have to make a pit stop, that car is going to need to take the most amount of fuel, which means his stop time is going to be longer. Well, with our cars now, with the draft the way it works, it's really hard to make moves forward on your own. So you want to try and leapfrog, on pit road. So you try and save as much fuel as possible by kind of being in the middle of that pack. And then when you make the pit stop, you try and get to the front of it by taking less fuel. And then from that point on, from the pit stop onwards, it is wide open. Everybody's going as hard as they can,
So
on that front.
just by the dint of the fact that you've saved your fuel in the pack, that's enough to have a shorter pit stop and be ahead. So are we going to see anyone do a break, or does it tend not to happen?
There's chances of it, but there's pros and cons to every type of doing it. So like if you were one car and you tried to drive around the pack and drive up to the front, you're probably going to need to take more fuel, and you're going to be at the back of the pack when everybody's going hard.
But you could choose to do that. If you're at the back, you could probably make your way to the front.
Yeah, you need a little bit of help, but the pace slows down 2, 3, sometimes 5 seconds per lap.
Ooh.
And it looks really cool on TV because the
Yeah.
cars are really close to each other, and like, similar to a bike race. The cars are really close to each other, 4 wide. They look like they're racing really hard, but in reality, that's the slowest we're going is when we're all doing that.
Yeah, I mean, it happens in all motorsport. I think Formula E is showing the extreme side of it when they're trying to save energy on those bigger tracks. But Formula One also has a lot of fuel saving, and when you see them having to go flat out constantly, like in Qatar when the tyre stints were limited, actually no one's really set up to do that. So with the super speedways, there's always this talk of the big one, and how much of a concern is that in your area of responsibility, or is that down to the drivers to avoid what seems to be like an inevitable 20-car pileup?
There is some element of it that I think about. We used to talk about, well, when you're in the middle of the pack, you're most likely to get wrecked. But lately, the biggest shoves come from right at the beginning, right at the front of the pack, and the leader gets turned, and there's no safe position anymore, because the car in front has the most drag, so he's getting hit the hardest. So now he's crashing in front of 40 other cars, and they all just have to avoid him. Bubba, our driver, and Freddie do a really good job of seeing do the drivers look like they're pushing hard? Do they look like they're about to crash?
Freddie's the spotter. So, he's
Yes,
actually up
yeah,
there going, oh man, Larson's looking a little wild. There's going to be a crash.
exactly. Yep. And then from that point, they can decide, do we want to bail? Do we think the wreck's going to happen? Because you can't finish the race, obviously, well, if you don't finish at all, right? To finish first, you must first finish, right? So I think the drivers have that front row seat of, does it feel like we're about to wreck? And a lot of times now that doesn't happen until 10 to go, right at the very end of the race, where the guys are pushing as hard as they can, and then you just see the leader get turned. There's no safe spot from the big one anymore.
Okay, so obviously it's there's a bit of stage racing. So these tactics, getting out on pit road, everything you described there, they'll pick up the stage wins. But it's really all about the big push towards the end. This is my major, not criticism of NASCAR, but I'm surprised how long the races are. They're super long. So am I safe to do what I did at Watkins, which is I watched the first bit. It's really exciting. Then we just went off for a nice walk in the second stint, and then we came back, and things got pretty exciting at the end.
I would say that that's fair. Everybody's trying to survive, right? Everybody's just trying to make it to the end. So I think you might look up and see a TV while you're walking around and see the cars are all really close to each other. But at the end of the day, the end of the race is what's going to be really good and really fun to watch. So we do have that excruciatingly long race. And when the drivers are driving, inches apart from each other the whole time, saving fuel, managing their cars, managing their position, listening to the spotter the whole time, it's a mental nightmare trying to make it to the end. So
yeah, you got to concentrate.
Those lapses in judgment generally happen towards the end of the race when everybody's fatigued.
I think, people talk about it being, you're just driving around in a circle. But from my extensive sim experience doing the street stocks and maybe the trucks, if I'm feeling really brave, the margins of error are pretty small. You do have to concentrate a lot. And when they let me go, they let me sit in Bubba Wallace's McDonald's car. And the thing that really struck me was I was like, the steering wheel's like on top of you. It's so close. So I said to your boss, Steve, I said, how come the steering wheel's like right there? It's like by my chin. He goes, because you're there for 3 hours. You're not going to stick your arms out in front of you like in a single seater. And also there's not a lot of turning crank they need. So it's all about just being, I guess with those guys, you have to talk about being in the zone, flow state, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And for the speedways, when they're driving, any small movement, if you look like you're a little bit out of control, somebody is not going to want to push you.
Wait,
you really have to look.
What do you mean? Do you mean physically push?
Yeah. Like if you're drafting, if they're behind you and they're trying to push, and you look like you're maybe a little swervy, a little bit out of control, you look like you might wreck if I push you. So I might not want to push you. So I think that's the drivers that are able to kind of control their car, keep it smooth, especially for the duration of the race, 400 miles. So definitely makes a big difference.
You've got to give the car behind you confidence that you don't mind if they hit you from behind and push you.
Yes. If you get pushed and you're squirrely, that car is going to key up on their radio and say, hey, the 23 car does not look like he's very good right now. I don't know if I can push him to the lead.
And I guess that could be because is there much tire wear around a super speedway, or is it much?
No, very, very, very little tire wear. Usually right at the beginning they have a lot of grip, and then they get hot, but they don't really wear. So you'll see on pit stops, again, because we're trying to maximize our time on pit road, or minimize our time on pit road, I guess you could say. It's all fuel only stops, so we don't even change tires except for at the stage breaks.
Final thing, because you're the busiest guy in the 2311 building, is that we might not get told off as much on the Saturday for bothering you than we have in previous times, because you don't actually do a great deal on the qualifying. Davis was saying to me they do one qualifying lap.
Yep. Hopefully two, because it's 2 rounds at the speedway. The Toyotas are inherently a little draggier than some of the other manufacturers, so our speedway qualifying efforts haven't been great, but we've been slowly improving, so hopefully we make a second round. But it is a lot of standing around, and you wait for your car to take off. You make sure your driver hits their shift marks to maximize, launch off pit road, because they want to get to terminal velocity as fast as possible, and that's it. Then they just they spend a minute wide open, they cross the line, you see the time, and you hope it's good enough.
That's amazing. So, and obviously, like you don't, they is the reason they don't do more because you don't want to risk wrecking it, or was that a factor in?
Um,
No.
I'm not sure. We're only allowed one, but I don't know why. So
For the record, it is mainly Matt that gets told off for harassing JR and the tyre crew guys. So if you want, I'll message the tyre crew guys ahead of time and I'll say, Matt's coming.
Matt's coming.
Yeah, that Matt's on his way, and they can all like hide and look busy. JR, really looking forward to seeing you. Thanks for that. I think essential guide for understanding the on-track action, and good
Yep.
luck at Talladega.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, once again, we wander off into America land on our NASCAR adventure, and we have no idea where we're going. Never heard of Darlington. I'd only heard of Watkins Glen from doing iRacing and from the olden days history videos from Formula One. But this one I have heard of because this is the home of Will Ferrell, Talladega, out of Talladega Nights. And I've got 2311 comms guru, Davis Schaefer, who's going to be our guide on this journey. Davis, tell me, how important is Talladega? Is it the Monaco of NASCAR?
Probably to some, it's the Monaco of NASCAR. They're all important, right? All the races are important. They're all opportunities to score points, to score a win, to win a stage. Lock yourself into the playoffs. And the super speedway races can be maybe a little more unpredictable than some of the other tracks. So it kind of offers the whole field that chance to get into victory lane when maybe a intermediate track or a road course might not be their forte.
Is that the polite way of saying it's a bit random and some bum could win?
Um, maybe one way of putting it. There are drivers who really know how to get around those racetracks, how to be patient when they need to be patient, when to maybe not be totally aggressive, but know when to change lines. And so I think that the longer I've watched these races play out, there's maybe a little bit of luck involved, but there's also quite a bit of skill in terms of just what I said, of kind of knowing when to make your move and knowing when to wait.
And from a business point of view, like I've heard people not do down Darlington, which was the first race that we came out to see you guys, but they say that's perhaps a bit more spit and sawdust kind of thing, spittoons just around the ground. Is Talladega? Is it more? Does it attract more business and commercial side stuff?
I think Talladega and Darlington has this a little bit too. Talladega has a lot of name recognition. So over my years of going there, I feel like you do get folks who, on the business side, who are interested in coming to Talladega for the experience of Talladega. If you have a bucket list track in NASCAR, like Talladega is probably going to be one of those like top 5 tracks. Most people, I'd say, even if you're just a casual fan of racing, you've probably heard of Talladega. Be that through some of the wild finishes or the wild races people have seen there, or through media like Talladega Nights.
I was asking some of your team, I was like, so Talladega Nights, is it a fair representation of NASCAR? And there was some almost embarrassed like looks down at their feet, kind of like, yeah, some of it's pretty spot on.
What is art imitates life, and you'll see it at Talladega, but the racing's always exciting and compelling. And but then there's also just this great atmosphere at the racetrack that it feels like you're at a race, but there's also a festival going on.
And I don't know if you've got any bosses lurking around behind you, but you've got a new guy. How's the new guy getting on? Is he doing all right, fitting in, or are you making
I
him
think he's
make
fitting
tea
in.
still
Yeah,
and mop out the?
I think when the jump from Xfinity to the Cup Series is a big one. The races are longer. We don't have as many breaks. But Riley seems to be a sponge. That's a little less on my side of the building, but learning a lot, putting the work in, and really for that team, one of the goals was just run all the laps. Like if you're on the track, you're going to be learning. And so I know they've had some frustrating races, but they've been able to stay on track, and I think that will, when we start going back to similar types of racetracks, all those days where they manage to run a laps I think will prove beneficial.
Hey, looking forward to seeing you guys out there. I think just finally, we love this. We like people to stake their reputations on predictions. It's a very different atmosphere if things go wrong at the end of the race than if you get a decent result. Are you going to be in, what do they call it, victory lane? You're going to be in victory lane at Talladega.
Well, we managed to get into victory lane last year at Talladega with Tyler in this race. So, yeah, I think any one of our cars has a chance to be there at the end.
And on the YouTube version, I'm either going to intersect this with footage of you with your head in your hands at the end of the race or celebrating with champagne. So, look, it tends to be this thing, at the end of a race, everyone needs to go and catch their flight. But if you have a victory somewhere like Talladega, does the boss come down and say, hey, travel plans have changed, we're hanging one on?
The travel plans don't change. They just get delayed a little bit. Winning at any track, whether it's a long flight or a short flight, it's always a great feeling to be the last car to show up to the airplane when you've got a trophy in hand.
Davis, I'll see you in Alabama.
Can't wait.
Alrighty, we are now here with Steve Laletta, team
President.
It's
me.
very fun, very exciting. So you go to every single race on the calendar pretty much?
I do not.
You
I
do
hired
not.
a great team that makes sure we're doing what we need to every week, and I go when I absolutely have to go, which is a lot, but not every week.
Okay, and is it all work or do you still get to enjoy the experience here and there?
No, it's work.
It's work.
I mean, obviously we do this to be competitive, and that's fun. But we're here to get a job done, and as soon as the job's over, we go back and look at the next weekend to do it again.
And the job is to do phenomenal racing and win?
Yeah, win on and off the track, right? We've got to deliver value to partners that help us fund everything, and we, value them being part of our team, and then we've got to hire the right people that put the cars on the track in the way that makes them run up front, hopefully win races.
NASCAR, incredibly competitive. Formula One, sometimes competitive. Yeah. Do you have a sales pitch for why you think Formula One fans should absolutely be tuning into NASCAR?
Well, I mean, look, I think it starts with, if you like motorsports, you should watch a lot of it. I do. I watch Formula One all the time. I do think NASCAR is a lot more competitive. We probably have 20 cars every week that could win the race. There's 36 that run in the races. And we race on a lot of different tracks, mostly ovals, but they are all different and all challenges for us. We race on road courses, so the variety of it is pretty interesting. The personalities are great. There's a lot of rivalries in our sport between teams, between drivers, between sponsors, and so that's always fun. And, there's been, I ran a different team that Juan Pablo Montoya raced for. We brought him back last year. There's been other Formula One drivers that have come here. It's a super challenging form of motorsport. And I think anybody that loves watching cars go fast should check it out.
And this weekend we are at Talladega Super Speedway. What would fans have to look forward to the most as far as action on track goes here?
Yeah, I mean, the cars are running around as a pack. They can't get away from each other. We run a restrictor plate in the motor, so they're all really close. Anybody can win. I mean, Tyler Reddick, our driver, won this race last year, and he led the last 80 yards, so it's a very difficult, there's lots of opportunities for crashes because they're in a pack. So if somebody makes a mistake or something breaks, they're not going to crash by themselves. They're going to crash with a lot of other drivers. So there's a element of luck involved. The fastest car is not necessarily going to win at a super speedway. And it's super exciting for the fans. I don't think the teams love it as much because it takes too much luck into it versus the preparation we can do to really dominate a race. But for fans, they love these kind of races.
And I mean, you have a 3-car team this year. You could go for a full podium, not just a 1-2.
We could. That would be amazing. Yeah. If they cooperate and help each other, that would be a great way to finish.
Drivers cooperating and how you're not selfish drivers, never.
Right.
All right, great on-track action. What about trackside? NASCAR obviously is a very different environment than Formula One. What is it that fans seem to love the most when it comes to attending a NASCAR
it's really
race?
it's really cool because it's like a family atmosphere. Like everybody is super friendly. a lot of camping goes on at a NASCAR race, and you could walk up to somebody's camper that you've never met before, and they'll offer you something to eat or a drink. Again, the rivalries and the drivers they support, there's a lot of back and forth that goes on. You know, here at Talladega, there's a thing called the Boulevard, which has a massive party every night. It's just a great environment, you know, to come and hang out with friends and family. And then there's people, depending on where you sit or where you park, you become friends with those people because it's the same mostly every year. As we're trying to continue to bring new fans to the sport, they should feel really welcome to come to a NASCAR race.
Nice. And if we're camping, what is the must-pack food?
The must-pack food, I'm probably some sort of chips and candy, chicken wings, beer,
The good stuff.
Monster Energy.
Well, thank you for an absolutely phenomenal chat. It is always great spending time here with the 2311 team.
Yeah, hope you guys have fun. Bring us some luck.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Well, it's time for the final verdict with Chumba Casino, partner of 2311 Race Team. 2311 have been really kindly hosting us at Talladega. Me and Matt have had a fantastic time, to the point that we didn't get an opportunity to record this final conclusion, what happened in the race, F1 versus NASCAR, while we were actually on track. When we did get a bit of downtime, the cars were going meow, 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 faster. So we are I'm in a hotel room in Miami, getting ready for the Miami F1 weekend. Matt, hello, is back in Brooklyn, prepping himself for the next push of this project, of this adventure.
Barely got back here in time, man. I had the nightmare flight yesterday. It was delayed 8 or 9 hours, I think.
Good. Flight admin. That's always the good way to start the topic.
Yeah.
Here's the question I want to ask you, and it's a completely unfair question. You know, NASCAR is one of the most popular motorsports on earth, and certainly in the United States per viewing figure, and so is Formula One. But I do want to ask you, Matt, if I gave you 2 tickets for next year, one to go out and hang out in Talladega and watch the super speedway, and another to go and watch Miami, which one would you go and watch?
Oh, that's really a tough one. I'm going to ask you a question in return, because that always makes for very exciting conversation. What level of attendance are we talking?
Yes, that's key. Yeah, so obviously 2311 made us very, very comfortable and made our wives very comfortable as well. But we did on the Saturday go and experience it from the stands and experience the Xfinity, which we've done all the Saturdays that we've gone and watched NASCAR event. And as a spectator in the stadium experience, being able to see the entire track, which at Darlington you could follow one car all the way around, see what they're trying to do in the pack, was incredible. And here at Talladega, you could see it most of the time because the track was like 2.5 miles long or something. They would disappear off, and they were actually quite small in the distance at the super speedway, but you could still follow it. There were times you had to look at the big screen to see what was happening down the back straight. But yeah, I would say let's do it from the stands, from a Muggle point of view. I still think that Talladega was a blow your socks off experience. Now, apart from the wonderful hospitality we had from 2311, we did get invited onto Dexter's bus, which was in the infield on turn 1. Now that is a very lovely spot that he'd managed to get himself there. But yeah, on top of his bus at turn 1, that was also a spectacular view. So it's a valid question. So the comparison is, sitting in the GA, sitting in the stands, and then do you manage to find that one killer spot to watch the event from?
Yeah, well, we found a couple. There was all the way up on the top. They had like those special roped off areas you could go to at the tippy top of the grandstands. If you know someone in the infield, you could get a wristband and go join them there. I think what I get from it is that the fan experience is a lot more welcoming at NASCAR. So I would say, like, for your dollar, you can get more access and do more things at a NASCAR event than you can for a Formula One event. But I mean, Miami is kind of a great city, and at Talladega, I think you only really experience it. We were talking about this. It's like they build an entire town in the infield. They have like garbage pickup. They have like public transit. They have these trams that take people around. And I think the Textures, like they've been coming there for 30 years. So like you twice a year for a weekend, you create an entire city and you have your little Talladega neighbors that you've known for years and you have parties and fun and apparently debauchery on the Boulevard. I don't know. This is something I heard, did not experience, I promise.
Citation needed. But yeah, I mean, from a hangout point of view, a lot of that does depend on other things. Like I don't have any friends, so for me that wouldn't be a thing. But I was thinking, like from a spectacle point of view, you could see so much more of the actual sporting event and follow it. Now, we were a little bit unlucky because actually, as it happened, the Xfinity and the Talladega, there's
we
normally
went to a NASCAR and a Formula One race broke out.
I know. Yeah, so there's normally like the big event and the big one, the big wreck, as people get very excited. But everyone was quite well behaved, and I think everyone was fairly happy with where they were at the front. So there didn't have to be a big one. So we had to do with that what we tell people they have to do with Formula One, which is look for the tactics, look what people are trying to do, look at them trying to shuffle positions. But there wasn't an out and out kind of overtakes, smashy, crashy, sensational thing that I got the feeling that everyone in the stands, even in the teams, were a bit disappointed that this hadn't kicked off.
Yeah, it really was almost a classic Formula One race. It was one with the overcut by the Chevy teams. And it was all about managing your fuel, making your pits at the right time. There was one brief caution in the first stint that sort of messed up some strategy for one of the 2311 cars, I think. But on the whole, it was one you needed to be glued to the timing and paying careful attention to. I will say, viscerally, there is nothing like being down close to the track when that pack comes around. Yeah. Formula One is exciting to me for different, it tickles different parts of my car brain, but man, it just the raw power, because you're doing 200 miles, they're doing 320 kilometers an hour, inches from each other, and you can see it. It's remarkable.
But we're comparing it to, say, the Miami Grand Prix, which we did get to see the sprint race from near turn one. And so for the sprint race, we were watching them disappear into turn one. There was always, nothing did happen. Oh, in fact, no, that was where Hamilton and Stroll came together, wasn't it? We watched it last year. But there was always a thing like, we're going into turn one, something might happen here, there could be a move here. I think that's where F1 was winning out, where lap after lap, really, as they were coming past you, there wasn't a huge amount happening until the kind of final crunch points for each stage end and then the end of the race.
Oh, yeah, you see these when we were lucky enough to be on top of the bus, we could see a lot more of the track. And I did see Tyler drop like 2 lanes down to the inside lane. And I was like, oh, that was very exciting, because like the way he picked his way through was very neat. But that's what you were looking for at this race. We've been to other races with more rubbing than racing.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to risk I'm going to drop in a little inside thing that the communications director. Sorry, Davis. You told me and you didn't say not to share it. But my wife asked a great question, which is, what if they're up high and then they want to drop down into the pits and do a pit stop? And Davis went, oh, well, it did happen, poorly once for Tyler, who was up top, realized the other Toyotas were pitting and went, oh, I best go for it now. Came down and basically ended up wrecking himself because he was turning far too sharply to drop down. And by the way, those... the steepness of that track doesn't come across, the steepness of the banking, until you stand on it. But yeah, he wiped himself out of the race because he didn't want to get out of sync with the Toyotas and lose the draft. And then apparently in the driver meeting beforehand, they said, okay, we don't want to do any last minute drop downs into the pits because it's dangerous. And apparently Tyler said, challenge accepted.
Yes, well, having had the distinct pleasure of chatting with him, I completely get that comment. He's a very, very chill and highly entertaining dude.
Yeah, no, it's he's never disappointing. And I was just about to share something else, which I'm not going to. Anyway,
okay, fair.
His personality, having gotten to speak to him in the hauler a couple of times, it does come out, and he is able to kind of express that personality when he's in front of the TV. And I think that's something NASCAR seems to have, and they can be far more open. They're not scared of being critical of certain aspects, other drivers, teams, the sport itself. Whereas in F1, they have to be a little bit more guarded. And if one of them does come out and starts being combative, it's huge breaking news. Whereas it isn't in NASCAR, because I think the personalities there can come through. And I've banged on about it before, but those driver introductions, oh my God, they're so good, because you get a little taste of what they're all like. And there's one guy, I've got to figure out who he is, but every time we've seen him, he comes out, nods slightly at the main MC, nods slightly at the crowd, and then walks off. Everyone else has got like a fist bump, a dance, throwing things out into the audience, and it's a good time.
Yeah, well, you got to embrace your personality. If your personality is that chill, then fair enough. But it did make me just in terms of contrast, like you can get onto the track for the driver introductions. You get onto the track, you can see the cars on the pit lane. You can get really up close. You see the drivers. We saw Tyler being interviewed before the race by, I think it was Fox. And you absolutely do not get that kind of access at a Formula One race unless you are spending, I don't know, lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of money. So I still feel like, and I will say this too, like different tracks definitely have different vibes. So if the Talladega vibe is not your vibe, that doesn't mean you shouldn't go to NASCAR. It means you want to find the track that's got your vibe to it. But I still think from a fan access and entertainment point of view, NASCAR is still winning. But Formula One is definitely making strides.
Yeah, and I think if we picked a track like Silverstone where there was more going on, it might be a slightly different conversation. But I think it's fair to compare to these, or even Circuit of the Americas. But from what we've seen, I mean, someone needs to sort me out and get me out to Circuit of the Americas if you want me to have a better opinion of it.
Us.
And include this. What did I say? Me? Whoops.
Us.
Freudian slip there. One ticket's enough. One ticket will be fine. We get to see a lot of the strategy side because we get to speak to JR to give us that insight. And then in F1, we've been really lucky to speak to Mike Caulfield, who was in the strategy department for Mercedes and for Haas. So I was surprised by how similar those guys talk about the tactics. So if both of those events that we talked about struggled with captivating audience from a purely visual point of view, there was a lot going on with the tactics and strategy.
Yeah, and this is this is NASCAR being renowned for its spectacle. This is where they run the risk if they have a race that's purely on strategy of maybe losing some people in terms of the racing. Whereas in Formula One, they've beat it into you that not every race is going to be an absolute banger, so to speak.
Whereas in NASCAR, they have the super secret double overtime. So, yeah, and this is a bit of an American thing that caused, I think, the problems in Abu Dhabi in 21 as well. So after Spa, they were talking about not wanting to finish under a safety car. And obviously that was a little bit of a farce on the Sunday. Their hands were tied a little. They were never really going to get any racing unless they left it until the Monday, and modern schedules and stuff being what they were. A little bit of a difficult situation to be in. Then out of that came a slightly unrelated thing of let's not try and race under the safety car. I think the not finish under a safety car is an American thing. I think the call the red flag and then have that. Oh, in fact, it is that, like in Baku, where they had the red flag and then, right, we'll just have those 2 laps at the end as a shootout. That exactly happens in NASCAR, except they will then add laps. So as long as the last big caution or big crash comes out before the white flag with 1 lap to go, they'll add a couple of laps and you'll have a couple of lap shootout. And that can happen over and over again.
Yeah, there can be too much of a good thing, as we discovered at Watkins Glen.
But my God, that was an extra hour.
We had just given up, and then finally they finished the race. But I like the idea of it, especially if you paid all that money and you're there, and it's a letdown when the teams walk off and you've just essentially invalidated the whole last part of the race. So I get the urge to do it, but there's only so much you can do. Sometimes that's just life, and you just, smile, accept it, and know that there will be a next time. I mean, I'm looking forward to going to Miami for a lot of reasons, but I am already trying to talk myself off of the ledge for seeing anything that's remotely exciting, because it was so good last year. It's going to be, there's no way they can match it. What could possibly happen to match it?
Rain.
I'm trying to tempt the fates here, if you haven't noticed it.
And if you're listening to this before the Miami Grand Prix and you're going out there, remember that me, Matt, and Christina will be hanging out there. And if you want to get in on that, can you send me a message at spannersready@missedapex.net, and I'll get you all the details. there's a crowd. We can still fit a few more bodies in, Matt, but it's looking like it's going to be about 200 people. So get your fanciest shirt and tie on, ready to be mildly entertaining. And you have to play along with the quiz. I don't have to because I'm the one compiling it and writing it. The tech side between NASCAR and Formula One. If you're into that and that interests you and you are looking for an engineering battle, I think Formula One does still win that. Whereas it seems a more linear, not development path, but it's a spec series. They've got different engines. They can do different setups, but the series decides what the car is going to be. And then there's very narrow parameters between that. They still can push the envelope in some places, which is why there's scrutineering. But really, it's a case of keep your car as undamaged as possible, because any damage you have is going to make you draggy and make you lose speed. There is a nuance to it. There is a tech element to it, but that's nowhere close to watching all the development upgrades. I don't think you'd have a great tech time with Summers or be able to have as much material in NASCAR.
It would be more of a challenge, mainly because the manufacturers, as I understand it, develop different aero packages. You got your road, your short, and your super speedway package, and they sort of lock in those choices for the most part. There's some areas of freedom. What gets interesting is in how they made these choices and how they play out with regard to the other technical factors, being in traffic, handling in clean air, and of course, always tire management and fuel efficiency being related to that. You couldn't do the big thing Formula One has is it has almost infinite updates. So at every race, someone has usually brought at least a new thing to talk about. But really, for the most part, these development paths for the cars are set at the beginning of the season, and there's more crossover than you might imagine. It's just sometimes the arrows being used in different ways in a NASCAR and a Cup car than it is in a Formula One car.
I have seen some great mechanicking, though, in NASCAR. So in Formula One, it's all preset, so you can change the wing. I think nowadays, when's the last time we saw a rear wing changed?
During an active
during
session,
a race,
during a race, it's been a while because
it has, hasn't it?
They've sort of, I think the design of them is a little bit more robust these days
or they
than
think
it used to be.
if you end up hitting, the cars don't collide like that to take out the rear wing. So if you end up hitting the rear wing, it's because you've gone backwards into the wall and your gearbox is probably dead anyway. But in NASCAR, we've seen some really great stuff where they've just gone, oh my God, right, let's try and batter out any kinks. You've got a bonnet that's come up, and then you've seen guys like just jumping on it, using their bodies as a physical hammer to try and get it down as much as possible and lose as much aero, or lose as little aero efficiency as they can. So in that way, that kind of mechanicking is more fun in NASCAR.
Yeah, it is. And of course, the cars can drive with a lot more damage. And they've even changed the rules now so that even if you get a tow within certain limits, if you repair the car, you can send it back out to race. And that's something that, is just pointless in a Formula One race. If you're in the pits and the repair takes longer than a lap, then you just want your rookie to get some extra mileage in, or you're doing an aerodynamic test for other reasons.
And by the way, I spoke to Steve after the race, and I was saying, hey, you promised me a big one. Everyone was saying there was going to be a huge, crash. And also I was saying to him, it did look like the Toyotas were trying something early on. They tried to pull away. And I don't know, maybe it put them out of sync. You can comment on this in a second. But it put them out of sync. So when it came to the final stint, they had to do something different with their fuel that wasn't optimal. But his sentiment to me was, do you know what? We came out of Talladega with 3 clean cars. 3 cars that we don't have to repair for next weekend. Because, not going to complain.
Yeah, no, it does cost money to fix things. So I think probably most teams that walked out of there without serious damage are going to be pretty happy. There were 2 disqualifications on technical grounds, though.
Thrilling.
Yeah, I know, but it happens in NASCAR too. Like I'm saying, there's more of there is more there than you would think. If you're just a Formula One fan and you have your imagination of NASCAR, there is more to it. It's harder to find a lot of technical stuff on NASCAR because they keep it more proprietary. But if you poke and dig, you can find people who do that. And it was really exciting, honestly, watching the cars on the grid, because you could look in, you could see radiators, you could see the clips and everything like that. It's very fun But as regards this strategy, my impression was they were trying an undercut, but because fundamentally they don't run as fast, they had to use more fuel to run
To do it.
up front, and that cost them refueling time. Whereas I think the Chevys were a little bit slimmer, so they were able to make the overcut work because using the same amount of fuel, they were actually able to go faster for the number of laps that they gained on the overcut.
Yeah, they
which-
had like a hammer. They had a hammer time moment as well. So when the
Yeah.
Toyotas dropped down into the pits, they could go right. Now's the time to use the fuel, get track position, get ahead, and then actually there was. I think I've heard a lot of this discussion with NASCAR on like missed Apex equivalents
Yeah.
that I don't understand. But basically, they were saying the penalty really for stepping out of those lines was really severe, which is why we didn't see many killer moves apart from Larson just trying to nudge the car in front and going, well, I mean, if he goes around, what can I do?
This can happen.
Yeah.
Yep.
Look, there is absolutely no need to make this comparison or make this decision. I steer between F1 and NASCAR, and I think F1 has a unique spot in the world with its engineering challenge and driver challenge. I'll take some convincing otherwise, although I did beat the NASCAR Experience stage host
You did?
at the NASCAR Sims thing. Only just though. Whew, I was concentrating so much. There is some video of that, by the way. So there is video of us on the NASCAR stage. At this point, I don't know whether it's going to make the edit of this show, but there is afterwards going to be a fantastic interview with our new friends. I hope we're going to be friends with them for ages. Mexican F1 Motorsport podcast with Memo Rojas.
Memo Rojas.
Memo.
And his friend and producer Muniro.
Yeah. So like they were absolutely fantastic guys. So I'm kind of putting that chat we had with them as a bonus at the end of this. But I think I would go next year to Talladega over the Miami Grand Prix if I had to pick one. And that I would never have ever thought that I would be there. But from an in-stadium experience, at turn one, I walked up the steps just as the pack was flying past our position, and you can get so close to this group, this herd of 40 NASCAR, and I just screamed and I was just shouting, and Scott and Denver on that bus were just laughing at me because it was just an unbridled joy, and I think that is the best thing I've seen in person in motorsport.
Yeah, it's hard. It's just the primitive appeal of unmuffled V8s running 500 to 800 horsepower and 40 of them going 200 miles an hour. Yeah, it's and they hit each other on purpose. That was Tyler was like, yeah, no, I get angry sometimes when they don't push enough. Like they're intentionally at 200 miles an hour smacking into each other's bumpers to go faster. That's the level of crazy we're talking about here.
However, if you said to me, okay, you can watch one of those on TV, I am going to tune in to the Miami Grand Prix. I do enjoy watching the F1 race. I'm sure some of that is down to I completely understand it. I know who the people are. I'm rooting for more or against people in Formula One. Plus, when the cars were in the pack saving, it is an awfully long race. I thought the commentators were having to work very hard to try and be like, and this amazing thing. There wasn't really a lot happening when they were doing the fuel savings and in the pack. We are used to that sort of thing happening in Formula One. But if you say, right, going to sit down and watch a whole event on the TV, I'm still going to go with the Miami Grand Prix.
Yeah, no, F1 is definitely more of a made-for-TV event
I think
these
so,
days.
Yeah.
You just get more. You can get a more complete picture of it.
Oh, that's boring then. So we agree. Fine. Well, we can't disagree on everything, although we've given it a bloody good try over the last 11 years.
We've made an effort. We've made an effort. Yeah, thank goodness the wives were there. That's all.
We're going to leave you with the great chat we had with the Mexican guys. But until we see you next, work hard, be kind, and have fun. This has been Missed Apex at NASCAR.
All right, well, we are here today with the 4-time Rolex Sports Car Champion, 3 times Daytona 24-hour champion, Memo Rojas. I cannot believe we've run into you in a NASCAR event.
For us, the NASCAR is not our expertise because we come from a road course background. But I got to spend a lot of time when I was driving for Chip Ganassi Racing,
Right.
which they used to have a NASCAR team. Well, so happy to be here because, as you know, we're going back. NASCAR is going back to Mexico.
Yes, tell me a little bit about that. I didn't know there was a Mexico branch of NASCAR to begin with. So, is this something that was really popular in Mexico?
Well, it's quite funny, and Munir, I mean, maybe you have a similar opinion about this, but uh, there's always been a huge fan base of motorsports in Mexico, but it kind of have been has grown a lot the last, I would say, 10 years because of two reasons: Formula One, and Formula One, as you know, we have the Mexico City race. I think more than 10 years now. And then we had Sergio Perez, which is, a very successful F1 driver that unfortunately he's not in Red Bull anymore. We can discuss about that if you want. But, and then, Drive to Survive. So what was very interesting is that there's a lot of new fans that have been cultivated the last 5 years. And so that fan base is already there. And now having NASCAR in Mexico is where we need to educate them, because NASCAR is a completely different, playground, right? And we have to educate them, and people are excited. They don't know what to expect, and I think they're gonna put up a great show.
Now, I really expected as a driver to be excited about the chance to ask you things like suspension setup evolution across a weekend in endurance racing. But I found out right before we recorded this, you have a podcast and you brought your producer, Maniro, with us.
Yeah, Munir is my co-host at Desde el Paddock. As you mentioned, I stopped racing a year and a half ago,
Right.
and one of my projects was to kind of spend time talking about what I love, which is racing, with my buddies in a casual way, like we are having fun in your house, in my house, in the couch with a few beers. And
How many beers?
that's we need to start introducing beers in the podcast. And Munir, my buddy here, we've created this podcast. He's a great content creator, specializes in Formula One and soccer. And Munir, how's it been for you?
I mean, you were talking about the fan base about NASCAR. I was commentating NASCAR like 2 years ago, and the fan base is not that big as it is in Formula One. We have a lot of new people coming into Formula One because we have Drive to Survive. We had Sergio Perez, we have Pato Ward, we have now Daniel Suarez in NASCAR, but we want to increase the amount of new fan base coming into NASCAR. So that's why we're coming in and we're sharing the experience of being with Daniel Suarez, with the pilots and that. But NASCAR is so big in USA compared to what it is in Mexico. Like the amount of people watching the races, going to the track, it's really different from Mexico to USA. So we wanted to take that experience and use it for the people that's going to be in Mexico City with Daniel Suarez.
But the crowd for Formula One in the stadium in Mexico, oh, I'm so jealous. That's the number one. I'm trying to get out there with the ringer. I keep saying, come on, we've got to go to Mexico. Can you recreate that for NASCAR? If you put it on, if you build it, they will come.
I think, they have the stadium, the track goes through the stadium. And for me, when people ask me, where's the best place to watch the race? For me, it's in the stadium. And ironically, it's the cheapest ticket, I believe.
No.
Yes,
Turn one.
because it's so big, and also it's one of the slowest corners but the atmosphere, the vibe, it's like a huge party. Everybody's enjoying Formula One, and the vibe is unique. And for me, it's not only watching the race, the podium ceremony, they do it in the stadium. So, and they have this like crane, or they lift the car and they do this, the podium. And immediately after they do the champagne, a DJ comes up and they open the gates and everybody's in the track and it's a big party and it's like.
And the booing. Because when Leclerc touched Checo Perez in that race 2 years ago, yeah, that was really loud.
Oh, Vados, but fans are,
Yeah.
they are
Passionate.
Yes.
So you guys are allowed to support Perez, but God forbid British people support Lewis Hamilton. We get accused.
What? Can I ask you something?
What do you think about Lando Norris?
What? No, well, I was gonna ask you. No, this can get interesting. So, okay, so you're English.
Yes.
You are American. And do you support someone?
No, I have, as an American, Formula One wasn't always available to me growing up. I have Mario Andretti, I remember from my childhood. Then nothing. I watched some in the 90s with Schumacher and Haggett. And I caught Lewis Hamilton on Top Gear in 2007. And I was riveted. Came across him in 2008 and happened to tune in for the last 5 laps of Brazil and watched him and that whole drama.
Yeah.
And then I was just hooked. So Lewis Hamilton really has always been my guy in the sense that's why I got into the sport and why I've always supported him first and foremost. But as you watch, other people catch your eye, and the Ocon caught my eye. He did that qualifying in Spa in the wet, 3rd place in the Force India. And I thought, that's some kind of crazy talent right there. And then he got the bad break when the team got sold of losing his drive, but he managed to hang on and come back. It's just always a bit of an underdog. But it's, I like all of the drivers, but some of them just...
So let me ask you to both of you, since you both admire Lewis, and I have to tell you, for me, if I have to pick a driver that I admire the most, is Lewis, for sure. For many reasons. I mean, Max is super talented. There's some things I don't love about him. I know him at a personal level. I've met him. I've spent time with him. And I think Lewis is a very complete driver. I don't know if he's past his prime. There's people speculating about it. I don't believe it.
No.
But he's struggling, so that's my question.
How old are you?
I'm 44 now.
I'm 44 as well. Oh, it's a similar risk. Been like you two. My knee doesn't work. I feel old. I get sleepy. I wake up at 3 in the morning. At 44, 40, it is old. You do lose something.
Things happen.
You're a driver.
I retired a year and a half ago. And I was not in Formula One. I was in prototypes, in sports car racing. I did Le Mans. My last Le Mans was 2023. And one thing I said to myself, I want to stop racing before I feel any sort of decline.
And you didn't.
And something, life gives you cues. And I was in Fuji in Japan for the World Endurance Championship race. And I remember I woke up with jet lag and 3 a.m. in the morning. I was tired. And I said, I've been doing this for 31 years. What am I doing in the middle of nowhere in Japan, away from my family? I said, it's time to stop. And I hadn't felt like I started to decline. And my last championship, I won the European Le Mans Championship in 2019. I think I was 40 or 41 years old. I don't remember.
Okay.
And I was still, when I retired, I was still competitive. But I wanted to stop just before. And I think I kind of guessed it right. I don't think I would be at the same level now than 2 years ago. But I wonder if Lewis, being 40, is what people are speculating. He's struggling for sure. I mean, that's a fact.
Well, if it turned out that it was an age-related struggle, if that's the truth in the end, it turns out like that, it's not a big surprise, and there's no shame in it. Schumacher, at 40, was doing that.
Was not really the same.
Ricardo,
Well, Ricardo had a used didn't he?
I don't know if it's still worth it. That's worth the risk, yeah.
Because you've got more to lose. When you're 20, you're stupid and you've got nothing to lose. You've got a family, presumably you want to be around for them. And then Lewis has built up this life and this legacy. You think, is it worth doing it?
Yeah.
And then you've got Leclerc there, who's just in his complete prime. I tell you what, to answer the question, as a Hamilton fan, I'm a little scared. I am a little scared that it might be.
In our podcast, we always ask all the guests that question. We always ask them if they think the 2021 championship was taken away from him. And it's kind of, I would say 70% of the people we invite, they say it was taken away. And there's like a 30%, including him, that they think Verstappen won it.
They should have taken the red flag out, and that would be the solve of the problem. Let them race with this exact same tire.
It was a shit show.
Which they did earlier that year in Baku, There was a lot that was wrong with that. If you were to drive again, now I know that you're not, but if you were to drive, since we're at a NASCAR event, I have to ask this question. Which track would you want to race on?
Le Mans.
Yeah.
Because it's the only endurance race that I didn't win. I won Daytona 24 3 times. I won Sebring 12 hours. I won Watkins Glen many times. I won all the major European races. I won the IMSA Championship 4 times. I won the European Le Mans Series Championship twice. And I didn't win Le Mans. And I would trade any championship for a Le Mans win.
One of those? Yeah. If you like wake up.
I got four. I got three Daytona watches from Daytona 24, but no Le Mans.
And you trade.
I got pole position in 2018. Gearbox broke with 3 hours to go when we were in the fight for the lead. And always something Le Mans. There's a saying at Le Mans that they say Le Mans chooses you, because at Le Mans you can do everything right, and still, even if you do everything right, you can maybe not win because of destiny or
If I had to pick one, what's better, NASCAR, Formula One, both of you?
We have to be very straight. Formula One. Yeah.
at this point, Formula One.
Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us. It's a pleasure meeting you, and I guess we'll look forward to the.
Well, we'll invite coming into the hang pod.
Yeah, maybe we can do something.